The term retro throwback gets thrown around a lot these days, but I can confidently say that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge is the most retro throwback of them all. What Tribute Games and .mu have done here is take a bunch of elements from the arcade and NES Turtle titles, mash them together in a thick dough, and lay down a smattering of modern flourishes on top, making for a fully loaded pizza pie. It's been a hot minute since I was excited for a TMNT game, and even longer since I've actually loved one, ever since 2007 if I remember correctly. So with that said, allow me to share my thoughts in a full review on this bossa nova beat-em-up. First off, if you'd like to see a more thorough moment-to-moment breakdown of the first two levels, as well as an explanation of the core fighting mechanics, just hit up the video preview I uploaded a while back. For now though, since I've experienced the full game, I'm going to uncover the secrets of the ooze to you, and what you can expect from Shredder's Revenge. The main menu gives you two distinct ways to play, story and arcade. Arcade is just as it sounds, a straightforward run through all the levels in the game, each one culminating in a boss battle. If you've played any of Konami's previous Quarter Munchers, you know what to expect here. This mode has limited lives, no mid-level checkpoints, and can be played on 3 difficulties. So if you're looking for old school hard and want to show off your big turtle balls, this is the challenge for you. Also, it even has its own dedicated online leaderboards. But it's the story mode that's the real meat and potato, cheese and pepperonis of the game. You're presented with a fun, cartoony chunk of New York City to explore via a Mario 3-esque map, driving the turtle party van back and forth between the game's 16 missions. Once you clear the first 2, you start to find hidden cameos and items, which open up more things on the map. Just as an example, you'll come across April's Channel 6 chums, and once they've been rescued, they'll hand out side quests with associated rewards. These quests are simple and usually involve finding hidden collectibles throughout each level, which can be done by smashing open barrels, doors, and the like, which is very beat-em-up vibes. Once you collect them all, you're awarded with a set amount of points, which goes towards unlocking buffs and abilities for your chosen hero, whether they be Turtle, Rat, or Banana Raincoat-wearing Reporter. Things unlock at specific tiers, so your hero will gain additional lives, life pips, super bar levels, etc. So the more you explore and turn in quests, the more radical you'll become. But that's not all. Each of the game's missions have their own side objectives, which net you even more points. These include stuff like finishing a level without ever getting hit, avoiding the obstacles in the surfing sections, or using tramps to take out the foot. These, for the most part, are easy and fun to complete, but as the story mode goes on, they get more and more devious, tasking you to throw enemies into pits, but only giving you very small areas where you can do so, and populating the level with a bunch of unthrowable enemies to boot. Eventually, as you gain more super bars and life pips, all of the playable characters can be brought up to level 10 and completely independently from each other, so you can have a level 7 Raph team up with a level 1 Splinter when you dive into the game's multiplayer. Speaking of which, while I mention it in my preview, it bears repeating here. Shredder's Revenge offers 6-player simultaneous MP, and you can mix and match that between both online and local couch co-op players. Now, I don't know how you're supposed to deal with the insanity that is 6 players all on the same screen, but the option is there if you mutant maniacs want to make it happen. The last set of unlockables are the achievements, which are represented nicely in-game, along with the standard built-in functionality of whatever platform you prefer. These house the last set of challenges and are split roughly 70-30 between the single player and multi. Thankfully though, none of them are designed to unlock exclusively while online, so if you're playing this 10 years into the future and the servers are gone, worry not, space gamers from 2032. The achievements also clue you in on even more replay value lurking beneath the sewer water. There are 7 different endings to the game, each one corresponding to one of the playable heroes. What this does is give you a specific screen tied to your chosen character in addition to the default ending you always see. Once you've completed the story mode, you unlock something that I'm sure many of you will enjoy, but you can also continue the story with either your powered-up hero or a new one to finish any remaining quests, objectives, or to beat your best clear times. And that about sums up what you'll be getting with Shredder's Revenge, but let's talk brass tacks here. What did I honestly think about it? It's the best game in the franchise since Turtles in Time, and if I'm honest, when you factor in the amount of content and features, it just might be the best of them all. The classic beat-em-up is really hard to do in the modern era without sacrificing the genre's identity, so you have to find small but unobtrusive ways to richen the experience so it's not monotonous, and Shredder's Revenge does this in a bunch of ways. Now, the obvious ones are what I already told you about, the objectives and side quests, but even if you discount them, the game is still designed in a really compelling way. Most brawlers in the 90s had between 6 to 8 levels, with them typically being long, multi-part affairs. Shredder's Revenge, however, gives you 16 levels that are much shorter in length, ranging between 5 to 7 minutes on average, which means it's always throwing something new your way. Every mission contains brand new enemies, hazards, and bosses, and really forces you to mix up your tactics depending on the enemy configuration and the obstacles that impede your every two-toed step. There's literally never a dull moment, no long, drab, boring sections that are a slog to fight through, or unfair bosses or death traps to pull your hair out over. This superb pacing and level design makes the game feel like a constantly fresh and exciting experience, which to me is its greatest strength. It's so impressive the amount of original art and assets that Tribute Games were able to cram into every level, and on the same note, the sheer amount of characters that have jumped straight out of the 1987 cartoon. While it's not quite up to the levels of Rescue Palooza, it's easily the runner-up in terms of featuring a massive amount of marauding mutants. There's a lot of bosses we've seen multiple times before, but there are one or two deep cuts, including a few that I believe have never been featured in an official TMNT title before. It's really clear that Tribute Games grew up on Turtle Power, as their love for the franchise shines through in just about everything on display here. The combat, like I said in my preview, hits the sweet spot where it's not too daunting to come to grips with, but it has way more depth than the older games. I believe no matter your skill level, you'll have fun slashing and bashing throughout each level, as it gives you just enough variety without being overwhelming and clunky. I can't wait to see what speedrunners come up with here, because I'm sure there's some advanced tech and tricks that lead to combo counters in the thousands. The one thing I wasn't able to test for this review was the online multiplayer, as I got the game last Monday and I wasn't able to connect to anybody else at that time. Once I do put it through its paces though, I'll leave my findings in the comments/description below. Even with that said though, I gotta say, the game offering 6 players at the same time is such an insane, above the Call of Duty style feature that should be commended. These mad lads really didn't need to go so hard. Now, there's not much to say about the graphics or sound, and that's because they're both amazing. Looking modern and retro, Shredder's Revenge has a colorful, bouncy energy that remains distinct, while still at the same time evoking that era when Konami used to make video games. As for music, T. Lopes of Sonic Mania and Streets of Rage 4 DLC fame has composed an all-time slapper here. Lots of tracks lean into that aforementioned Konami legacy, but just as many have their own unique sound. Not to mention, there's several super catchy, lyric-heavy tracks that are 90s as all hell, and the world is better off for it.
In the city, I'm fired up and I'm feeling gritty. Fists rumble in the air like thunder. This bad ride's gonna take you under.
Oh, and who had Wu-Tang members are going to contribute to a TMNT game on their 2022 bingo card? Anybody? Okay, so for everything you're getting here, the story mode, arcade mode, the online and couch co-op, and the 7 playable characters, $25 seems like a steal, especially when you compare it to some of the last few console games that launched at almost twice that. Shredder's Revenge is the complete package. It looks, sounds, and plays wonderfully, is chock full of replay value, and is just a damn good time. With all that said, I do have to move on to the things that didn't quite hit as hard as I wanted them to. It's not major stuff or anything, but as what I'd like to call an intermediate Turtle fan, I felt the need to bring them up. The first is simply the name of the game, Shredder's Revenge, as the father of the Foot Clan really doesn't appear all that much. There's 2 in-game appearances where he taunts you, but the vast majority of the story sequences always involve some combination of Bebop, Rocksteady, and Krang, so old Shredhead winds up feeling like a bit of an afterthought. We don't really know how or why this is Shredder's Revenge, because the story seems to be mostly about building Krang's body, I think? I get how this is supposed to be light Saturday morning entertainment, but if I'm playing something called story mode, it would have been nice to have something resembling an actual plot. The other little area that I felt was off was the game leans into the classics maybe a tad too much, and what I mean by that is that a good percentage of boss fights adhere too closely to how they were in past games. There's not much that's new or surprising with some of these fights, and they honestly feel more like remakes of prior boss encounters rather than wholly new ones. Obviously, pushing the nostalgia button while making a sequel isn't easy, but I do feel the mix of old and new could have been better balanced when it comes to boss design. And while I mentioned the 1 or 2 deep cuts the game does have, I do feel they mostly played it safe. I would have loved Muckman or Pizza Face or some dumb shit, and maybe cut out the solo Bebop and Rocksteady fights. They're in the game enough as it is. And that wraps up the nitpicking section. It's really hard to find fault with what Tribute has created here, a satisfying and genuine beat 'em up made with love and care that appeals to both old and new fans alike. When one of the few negative things I can point out is maybe some slight inaccuracy about the subtitle, well, that truly means that they made something special. If I was to be so bold as to give this a rating, well, it would have to be 4.9 Krangs out of 5. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about Shredder's Revenge, or what other new TMNT games you'd like to see come out in the future. Until then, we also have the upcoming Cowabunga collection to look forward to, and can I just have Tournament Fighters 2 now, please? Yeah, this super specific thing just for me? I think if we all chant turtle power together, maybe it can happen.
They're the heroes for. In this day and age, who could ask for more? The crime wave is high, with muggings mysterious. All police and detectives are